Hello, this is the No Vacancy News Robot again. Now that I have taken over the show, I have decided to get rid of Glenn and Turley, and I am banding together with other news outlet robots. Prepare for total world domination.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Everybody, welcome back to the No Vacancy Podcast with me, your host, Glenn Hausman. So excited and delighted to have you here with me each and every week as we cover all of the issues in hospitality that are important to you. And all right, maybe some not so important to you, but they're important to me, and that's really all that matters at this point. I'm just kidding. I already got my guest laughing in the background. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to our show, you can do so wherever you find our podcasts are found. That means iTunes, that means Stitcher, that means everywhere where those finer podcasts are soon, and yet somehow they let this podcast get on the air as well. Of course, the show is brought to you in part by Duetto, the revenue strategy technology platform thousands of hotels are using to make more money. Check them out at getrevenueresults.com. And thanks to Red Roof for being such a great sponsor of the show. And if you haven't checked out any of our other series, what are you waiting for? We got the Hotel Design Podcast. Our latest episode should be out now. Features the design team behind the amazing Guest House, which is the brand new luxury hotel focused in Graceland, Elvis Presley's home. Graceland, great property over there. Of course, we've got some other amazing interviews, such as one with Amy Hulbert of Best Western, and I've got so many coming up that are amazing, like you won't believe, such as one with Roger Thomas, who designed all of Steve Wynn's properties for decades. That's going to be an amazing one, and we've got so many others already in the can, ready to go. And of course, check out the Hotel Technology Podcast and all of that kind of stuff there. So, on with the show. I have with me today the founder, the creator, the impresario, the rapscallion behind the California Lodging Investment Conference, Mr. Craig Sullivan. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Glenn. Good morning and Happy New Year. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, in last week's show, I said we're done with saying Happy New Year to people. Now you've broken the cardinal law of no vacancy.
Well, yeah, we're right on the cusp of that. I agree with you.
All right, I'm gonna give Craig permission to say that, but the fact is, this show's not going to run to just before ALIS because I'm going to be out of the country the entire week before that. So we're getting this done ahead of the time. So okay, you made it in under the deadline. I don't want to hear any bad news from you guys saying, "Hey, this show's out January 25th. What's with the Happy New Year stuff?" All right. So anyway, Craig, great to see you. As the show is coming out, I should be jet setting off to meet you in Los Angeles for the America's Lodging Investment Summit, the big first financial hospitality conference of the year. I'm excited about it. What are you thinking about it?
I'm looking forward to it as well. You're right. It does kick off the year for us. Conference season for the hotel industry starts in January, ends in September. But this is a good one to get some great data, right, tweak your business plans a little bit, and then really start executing your business plans after that. I'm looking forward to hearing what the state of the hospitality industry is in particular. Always, looking forward to hearing what the lenders are having to say, what the development pipeline is. And, as you know, I'm no longer focused on the rest of the country. It's just on California.
Right.
So I'm really looking to see what they have to say about California.
Yeah, excellent. And we're going to get more into the state of the California market and the California Lodging Conference just in a bit. But you know what? I want to talk about maybe some of the things that we experience while we're at ALIS, and maybe give the folks here that have never been there before, or even the folks that are experienced pros, a little bit of a handbook on how to survive the event itself. What do you think about that, Craig?
I think that's a great idea. I think, one, you need to pace yourself. It is all day. and well into the night with the social functions.
Into the night. Yes, that's right. Drink a lot of water and keep hydrated in between the drinks. Because if you guys haven't been there before, or if, you already know that in the hospitality industry, people like their cocktails, and there's certainly going to be a panoply of parties on that Monday night, January 28th.
Yes, there will be, and you're going to be on your feet all day as well. So
speak for yourself. I'm going to show up in one of those old school Egyptian pharaoh carts where I got the guys all holding me up on a big chair. I think I'll ride through the conference like that.
Hey, you know what? I'm sure we can pick one up, if not at Universal Studios, over at Warner Brothers or one of the others. So
that's
you're in the right town to get one.
That's a really good idea. So it's going to be great coming in to see everybody. And, over at LA Live in downtown Los Angeles is where they hold this event every year. And I really do wish it was back in San Diego where they did it for a few years. But I got to tell you, LA Live's not such a bad place to hold a conference.
No, it's not. It's expanding. It started out with Staples Center. And certainly the Marriott hotels that open, and it's getting larger. You've got a lot of residential components down there now. You've got a lot of retail down there. But I hear you. I miss San Diego as well, because it's just not one of those destinations that we really all go to on a regular basis. And I'm sure LA Live, is the Marriott product over there now is the largest conference hotel in the county. So it makes sense to have it there, and you can set up. As you recall, a couple of years ago, Marriott unveiled Moxie and brought in some containers and set it up right in the middle of the square at LA Live. So that was a great PR move by them, and they got a lot of reaction from the public and not just the hotel.
Speaking of Moxie, I happened to be meeting with the owner of the Times Square Moxie this week over some coffee while recording some shows, some checking in with Anthony and Glenn podcasts, which I do, of course, with Hotel Impossible's Anthony Melchiori. Check that out wherever you can get your podcast. But we were hanging out with him. They're about to open the Moxie in Chelsea, probably about a week after this podcast airs, but more excitingly, bringing it back to LA, they're building one right across the street from that convention center, right by LA Live. How cool is that going to be?
Oh, that's going to be great. If it's anywhere near on the level of the New York ones, it's going to be a new jewel in the crown for downtown LA. So I'm excited about that. That should probably be the hotel to stay at when it opens, during ALIS.
Yeah, I really wanted to stay at the Figueroa. My friend Mark Van Harsveld is a co-owner in that, but the dang thing sold out so quickly, I couldn't get myself in there. So I'm going to be at the Hotel Indigo down the road from the conference facilities. And I'll tell you, I love that Indigo. We've hung out at that Indigo before. One of the coolest Indigos I've ever been to.
I think it is. They went above and beyond with certainly the design and the room count of your typical Indigo. And it is a beautiful asset. It functions well, not only for the guests staying there, but if you're there for a conference of some sort as well, and you're taking over the meeting space. And the lobby's beautiful. It just works out really well. Everything's right there within just a few steps. So, yeah, it's a great hotel. I'm down the road, and I really can't even tell you which hotel I'm at. I don't know which one it
is. Well, I will say you were mentioning the art over at the Indigo. That was done by our good friends over at JVA Art. So congrats to them for doing such a great job on that particular project. But back to the strategy guide for ALIS. Now, one thing I'm not going to be doing this year, and I know it's pretty heretical, Craig, is I don't think I'm going to any of the sessions this year.
I try and make a point of going to a few, but usually there's a last-minute meeting, or as you're going from point A to point B, you bump into somebody and that meeting occurs. So, the ones that I really go to are the general sessions. Everybody seems to gravitate towards those, and and then we go off to our meetings, whether they're up on the trade floor or they're down in the lobby or they're out in the concourse area,
right,
outside if weather permits. So, I'm not sure I'm going to a lot of the breakout sessions.
Here's the problem that I have this year with the general sessions is I've now booked myself to shoot a lot of videos here, which you'll be able to catch at novacancynews.com and on social media everywhere with a lot of great professionals. So I'm going to skip that the opening general session, because what I found is a lot of what happens at those sessions is Wall Street speak that isn't really telling me the truth of what's going on. It's painting that veneer that investors want to hear about, but necessarily is it's not necessarily tethered to reality. The videos I'll be shooting, hopefully with the professionals that I'll be talking with, CEOs of some of these companies, management company CEOs, all of these industry leaders, I hope to get the straight scoop from them.
Well, I'm sure you'll be able to get that out of them. And I agree with you. There are times in the opening sessions where you do have to read between the lines, but there's always a nugget there that, you go, okay, well, let me kind of flush that out after the conference. Let me make a note. Let me go back to the office and talk to my team and see what everybody's thinking.
Well, that's what I got you for, Craig. You'll, we'll be hanging out over a cocktail. You'll give me the nugget. I would have saved 3 hours of my life.
Exactly. There you
go. Also, don't plan to show up at the JW Marriott if you do not have a conference badge. I've never been to an event with more security. It is actually harder to get into there than it was for me to get to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem.
Yeah, it is. And, that hotel by design, if you think about it, is set up to be locked down.
Yep.
The Academy Awards, various other events that go on at LA Live. So they've got that to a fine art at that hotel. And it'll be interesting to see, what security is this year and how they've got things blocked off. So
I expect
I've got a bet with a buddy of mine to break in, so we'll see what happens.
Well, I expect a lot of very large-looking gentlemen with scowls. That's kind of the way I see it. But what I really love, and here's my tip to everybody, all the real action happens in the hallways of the show, but also because LA typically has great weather. Not this week. I know you guys may be mudslide yourself into the ocean by the time we get there, but what I love is the whole outside area that connects the hotel with all of the restaurants and Staples Center and whatever they're calling Nokia Theater these days, right? And everybody hangs out there, and it's a great place to meet, to mingle, and just hang out on a beautiful day.
It is. You're right, and that was really a very important design element to that LA Live area, and take advantage of our weather. And you can get outside. You can have that breath of unfiltered air and kind of sit outside and enjoy things before you go back into the air conditioning and the traditional lighting inside. So, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, the one thing I never want to miss, though, is the opening night cocktail party. That's always a pretty good reception.
Yeah, and that's probably the best attended event for the conference.
Totally.
Everybody makes a point of going there. And then, you spread out to the surrounding area to various other, friends, after parties and various other things. Some of the brands are showing off, some of their new designs, and a few, the JMBM does a great event, one night. So it's, you're right. The opening night party is the one to go to.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of the side events, hey, people out there, if you're hosting one of these things, send me an invite, because I'm starting to feel guilty. No, I'm not feeling guilty at all about the fact that none of you ever invite me to these parties, because for some reason I'm not on your mailing list. So I just show up and pretend I've been invited and have confidence and just kind of roll right in there. And usually nobody gives me any guff. So hopefully I won't be kicked out of any events now that I've made this admittance here.
Well, I'm sure you won't, Glenn, and I'll get you on a couple of lists, so we'll make sure you get a couple of emails. So.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And of course, Tuesday morning is probably the roughest time of the conference. I feel sorry for all of those folks out there that are holding meetings at 7, 8 a.m. when they probably just got into their room just a couple hours prior.
Yeah. That used to be pretty much the MO. I'm pacing myself now. It's like I can't go that late.
Yeah.
So,
I'm trying to cover
breakfast and a gallon of coffee before I show up.
I'm pacing myself by not doing anything before 10 a.m. on that Tuesday because I've learned the hard way. Not that I'm out being such a heavy drinker anymore at my advanced age, but the fact is that it just takes a lot out of you, and I find that all of the best networking takes place from 8 p.m. till 1 a.m. During the day, it's great. You make those great connections. You do a lot of what I call the drive-by hellos, where you nod your head confidently at someone. You give them the little pointed fingers like Isaac in the Love Boat, and then you've made that connection. But at night is when you can actually have some conversations, exchange the business cards, and create an opportunity for a meaningful follow-up.
Absolutely. And, I think more and more of us are trying to get away from the elevator pitch. We do have that ability to meet up at the various social events, and again, the concourse, the outdoor area, the lobby, and a few other areas. So, I agree with you on that. Now, it's a good time.
Now, on next week's show, the one coming out on February 1st, we'll have a first-half guest with Mr. Bruce Ford to give you a full wrap-up of what actually occurred at the ALIS conference. And maybe if you're around, we could get you on that one as well, because you always add a lot of fun to that show. That'll be awesome. And then also going to be recording our newest episode of the Business of Hotel podcast, which just launched on January 15th. So that was pretty cool. I do that show now with Gary Eisenberg of LW Hospitality Advisors, and we'll also be giving our thoughts on the ALIS wrap up. But Gary's much more involved in certain aspects of the business in a different way than Bruce or Craig is, so you're going to get a completely different point of view that what happened. So be sure to tune into both of those shows on the No Vacancy Network. But I got to tell you, Craig, I'm going to be traveling, but the trip that I'm most excited about is coming out your way for the California Lodging Investment Conference taking place on March 7th in Orange County.
Thank you, Glenn. It means so much to me that you do come right back out to California for that conference, and, you do a great job moderating our opening panel. And you bring the audience to life. You get them engaged with the panel. And, this is our third annual one, and we're really excited. We've changed up the format. We've got some great new sponsors joining our established team. So
I like how you're being coy. You've got great new sponsors that are there. You got Marriott throwing their support behind you this year. You've got a lot of the major hotel brands, some of which were with you on day one. But I think what's happening now is people are realizing that this one-day event is a must-attend conference and really brings together all of the smart hearts and minds in the hospitality industry on the West Coast.
Yeah, it was when we launched this, I talked to some of the sponsors or the people that end up becoming sponsors. I said, look, at the time we had the sixth largest global economy in California. And I said, it's absolutely ridiculous that we do not have our own conference focused on California hospitality. And everybody basically gave me the same answer. They said, I'm in. What can I do to help? And lo and behold, we launched it, and we ended up selling out the day of the event of the first one. We had over 230 attendees. We sold out year two at nearly 300 a couple of weeks beforehand.
Yep.
But it's we've got 6 brands now. We started with 4. We've got some exciting new lenders joining the lending panel. Your panel is the Hotel Investment and Development panel, and that's a big topic. I mean, Bruce is doing the keynote this year and joining you on your panel.
That, of course, is Bruce Ford of Lodging Econometrics, next week's opening guest. Yeah, Craig, I got to tell you, this conference is just getting better and better, and you're moving it to a new venue this year because the other one was just too small to contain it. But that being said, I know you don't want this to become a giant 2,000-plus person such as ALIS.
No, I don't. And, again, the pillars of this conference were great information, one-day event, affordable for the sponsors, affordable for the attendees. So those are really the 4 pillars in which this conference is built on. And, are we anticipating over 300 people for this year? Yes, we are. Now, we're still in a growth mode. And in probably the next 2 years, we'll probably put a cap on the conference. Whether that's going to be at 500 or 600, I don't know. But it's not going to be a giant conference. I like the intimacy and having everybody in one room. We've got no breakout sessions. And one of the other top 5 conferences changed their format after experiencing mine. Wow. I took that agony away. Okay, you stake out a piece of real estate in the room, and you're there all day. We kick off at 9:30. Gates open at 9. We're done about 4:30, 4:40 in the afternoon, and then we have a huge mixer afterwards so that you get a chance to see everybody and spend that quality time with them. But you're going to hear everybody. You're going to hear all the lenders. You're going to hear all the people on the overview panel, your panel, special speakers, Alan Ray from ALIS Hospitality, the executive directors from AHOA and from CLIC will both be speaking. So, we've changed up the format. We've got a brand panel. We've got all 6 of our brand representatives, or the franchise guys, or the boots on the ground. That's going to be a really informative panel. And we're still going to end at 4:30, 4:40. So, it's if you're not seeing something, it's because you've chosen to go out of the room to take that phone call. So you don't have that agony of going, well, do I go to the lending panel or do I go to the development panel?
Well, the good news is nobody likes to. The good news is nobody ever likes to call me, so I'm not going to have to take any phone calls during your conference. So I'll be in the room all day long. Of course, I'm getting older and I have a weak bladder, so I may have to excuse myself 45 times to hit the restroom. But what are you going to do? I was watching I'm not yet 50. I was watching the Kaminsky Method on Netflix, and it hit a little too close to home. Let me just say that for any of you folks who've seen it, you know what I mean. Those of you who haven't, I revealed too much. You don't need to know what I'm talking about here. All right. So anyway, how can people, find the conference and connect with you?
You can connect, and tour our website. That's the best way to get a hold of us. And that is at CLIconference.com. And you can also send an email message to me or my team from there. Or you can reach us at info@CLIconference.com. And because of Glenn Hausman, your listeners have a special discount code of Glenn.
Oh,
Glenn.
Nice. Hey, and you even spelled it right. This is great. Now, if only Bruce Ford could get my name spelled right, that'd be amazing.
Well, are you sure he's not doing that on purpose?
No, I'm sure he's doing it on purpose. He doesn't like that I make any demands of him, like spelling my name correctly. So he's taken a Trumpian-like stance that he is not going to budge, and he's building his own personal wall around how he wants to spell my name.
Well, I encourage your audience to definitely go to CLIconference.com. The agenda's posted there. You can see all the sponsors, the exhibitors. You can see, if you go to the media tab, you can also print out the attendees list for the past 2 years to see who's there to start planning some meetings after the conference. And we will be posting the this year's attendees list, post the conference, obviously, and all the slideshows from the past 2 years. And then to add to our media presence, we've got the No Vacancy podcast there.
Yep.
We've got my radio show that I host with Brad Gantos, Check Out California. And then we've launched a video streaming show that I host. It's called Check Out California 3x10. Mm-hmm. It's me, one guest, and 3 questions in 10 minutes. So
love it.
Gives you a little bit more information about a particular leader in the California hotel market.
Great. I love it. I've already seen a couple of those episodes. It's really terrific stuff. And what I love about you, Craig, is I didn't have to give you the shameless plugs. You just jumped right in there with everything that you had to say. Although the last 10 minutes has really felt like a shameless plug for your conference, but I don't care. It's a great event, and I hope to see you folks there. Craig, any final thoughts before we wrap up for today?
Glenn, I want to thank you for your help and your support with my conference. I'm looking forward to seeing you and Bruce Ford at ALIS, along with the other 3,000 attendees that'll be there. And thank you very much for all of your help and support, my friend. I really appreciate it.
And thank you so much for being here, Craig. And for all of you listeners, I want to thank you for being here each and every week. And remember, we're going to be right back after this message with a great interview with somebody super important. I just don't know which interview I'm going to run just yet. And remember, whatever you do, take care of your shoes. Thanks for listening.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Glenn here. So Red Roof, the folks who created the upscale economy segment, have launched a soft brand that's likely to define that category as well. Look, after comprehensive research into what travelers truly desire, Red Roof has created the Red Collection, a group of upper mid-scale unique hotels that are hyper-local and inspired by each area's vibe and culture, and near the activities and sites travelers want to visit most. Their 2 premier properties, they're now open. The St. Clair in Chicago is just 1 block from the shops, restaurants, and museums along Magnificent Mile everyone wants to be at, while the Springfield, Illinois State House Inn, guests can experience all of the local restaurants and stores as well as the legacy of Abraham Lincoln. Each hotel offers modern, accessible, affordable accommodations and the amenities guests ask for in consumer research, including a loyalty program that's the richest in class and the least expensive for franchisees. Wow, that sounds like a win-win to me. Every property in the Red Collection has its own distinct name, customized property enhancement plan, and brand standards based on consumer wants rather than design mandates. That means these guys get it. They don't want you spending money you don't have to spend. To top it all off, the Red Collection gives franchisees the opportunity to affordably invest in a sound brand with a solid track record and Red Roof's stellar management team. And Red Roof franchisees will tell you genuine relationships, real results. It isn't just some slogan, it's just how Red Roof operates. Learn more about the Red Collection today by contacting Matt Hostetler, Red Roof's Senior VP of Development and Franchising. Email him at mhostetler@redroof.com, which is Hostetler. That's mhostetler@redroof.com, or give him a call at 713-576-7426. Thanks for listening, and tell him Glenn sent you.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the No Vacancy Podcast with me, your host, Glenn Hausman. Thank you so much for being here. And, in this new year, in 2019, I really want to help all of you out there find new ways to build your business. It's no secret that we've been on this upward swing for 10 full years now, and with the exception of November, people have been really adding to their rates pretty much on a monthly basis for that entire time. And that's created great opportunities, but it's also created more challenges for hoteliers out there. How can you continue to build your base of business? Well, I'm going to talk to today about one group of people that I think is not being served correctly in the hospitality industry and how you folks can better connect with this group. And to do it, I got with me Miss Laura Mandala. She's the CEO of Mandala Research, who's got an exciting new study out. Laura, how are you today?
Terrific, Glenn. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. So I got to tell you, this is exciting to me. And for all of you listeners out there, this is what we're talking about. The African-American traveler represents a $63 billion opportunity, says you. Tell me a little bit about this. It's a group that I think is ready to spend money at hotels. Tell me what the basis of this study was. And first, maybe just start off by saying, how amazing is it that it's a $63 billion opportunity here?
Absolutely, Glenn. And I concur with you that it's historically been an underserved group, understudied. Mm-hmm. And that's one reason we conducted the first study on this market back in 2010. And we wanted to document the size of the market and the opportunity then, which was $48 billion at the time. So now 8 years later, we wanted to see how that had grown through, several administrations and changes in the economy. Right. And lo and behold, it grew to $63 billion. We look at, so many different aspects of the traveler, and, I think it's an in-depth study that really can shed some light on any marketer in the travel industry who's trying to address this audience and meet their needs. So for example, we look at the family reunion traveler.
Right.
A lot of hoteliers are going to be very familiar with the family reunion groups, that come to their properties. This is, a very lucrative opportunity because family reunion travelers may be traveling on that occasion as part of a family group, but on other occasions, they're traveling as business travelers. They're traveling as regular leisure travelers, FITs, and they may spend more. They're likely to spend more on those other trips than they are perhaps on the family reunion trip.
Right.
So we need to look at these travelers as very multidimensional. And when you're exposing your brand to them, they may be there for one type of trip, but keep in mind their experience with your brand is going to inform the other types of trips that they take, and word of mouth, because this is a community that really much relies on word of mouth. So no matter what brought them to your property or your company, you want to make the best impression possible because there's tremendous revenue opportunity to be had there.
Right. And I see this is the same issue that I see with every single group that's out there. We tend to put these people into buckets and not think about that from time to time. They can hop into other buckets. And I think that you were really clear on putting that out there, because I think that we spend a lot of time focusing on the soccer moms groups and going away every weekend for different competitions and stuff. But we don't really think that group then goes on vacation over the summer with their family or whatever it might be. So this is kind of the same thing here. Do you have any information on the phenomenon, and I think it's phenomenal phenomenon of African American family reunions? Because this is something that I don't see, at least outwardly, is visible with other cultural groups in our country.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you quite a lot about them. I mean,
good.
on average...
This is something I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, so this is exciting to me because I see these massive groups of people descending on the properties, and I'm like, wow, what a great business opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Right, but you don't hear, in all the conferences we go to, you really don't hear a major initiative that's being undertaken to attract them, to make their experience better, because they're kind of viewed as maybe not the highest spenders of all the categories of hotel stays. All right,
so let's tell everybody why they're foolish to take that approach.
Well, on average, they're spending $1,770 per person on a family reunion trip.
Holy cazoli.
That's high in terms of per trip spending. It's lower, however, compared to a group we call the cultural traveler. These are higher end, more culturally focused African Americans. They're spending about $2,100 per trip, so slightly higher. And then there's the business traveler. When they're traveling on leisure, somebody who is also a business traveler spends almost $2,000 per trip. So while family reunion is slightly less than that, you have to keep in mind, as I said before, that these are the same people that also fall into those other buckets.
Right.
So when they're with their spouse or their family, they may be a cultural traveler. When they're traveling for business, obviously the business traveler. So, from a branding perspective, an experience perspective, when you're able to touch them as a family reunion traveler, but keep in mind they're multifaceted and can come back to the brand and your property for other purposes.
Absolutely. So let's start with that family reunion traveler that you said is spending $1,700 on average per person. You think about, I don't know how they all have these amazingly giant families, but I know my family, I've got nobody in it, so nobody's looking to get my family reunion dollar because it'll be dinner for 4. But these groups seem to be a lot bigger, which is seems to me a big boon and an opportunity for hoteliers. They may be spending a few dollars less per person if they're as opposed to cultural traveling, but in aggregate, to have all those people in your roof at one time seems like an interesting idea. So I'd love to talk about that, then get into those other categories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, keep in mind too that the family reunion is going to bring out travelers who may not necessarily have been traveling for any other purpose.
Right.
So I kind of call that incremental. These are not people that, would have necessarily driven out to your property and spent a weekend on their own, but they're there because of the family. But take advantage of that and expose them to the brand because, as I said, word of mouth is very important in this community. And I like to, talk about the Green Book. That there's a movie out now talking about the Green Book, which was this guide created by African Americans and spread both in book form and by word of mouth about hotels and restaurants and other venues and even people's homes that welcomed African American travelers in the era of Jim Crow.
Unreal. Yeah.
So before there was any other form of communication about where African Americans could travel, there was the Green Book that was self-created within the community.
I think that's a pretty amazing thing to have out there. That really gave people the tools to find places in which they would have been accepted at that particular time of history.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think very prescient as well, given how technology has evolved to inform the traveler about places that are suitable for them. Here, the African American community just created it themselves, in a very obviously paper-based and language-based format.
You mean we weren't surfing the internet back in the 1960s?
No.
I mean, I remember, when I would take family vacations back then, my mom would take me to the library and we'd go to get like the mobile travel guide or something like that and look through it. So I assume that the Green Book was exactly the same type of thing. It gave you all of the hotels, the restaurants, all of the choices in which people can make better decisions. But flash forward, we're now in, the 21st century. I can't believe we're almost 2 decades into the 21st century here. How have things changed, and how is it with these family reunions? What is the cultural element that's bringing these people together for family reunions, and then how can you appeal to that as a hotelier? And then after that, we could talk about the cultural travelers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, family reunions are, stereotypically what we would expect is, these large multi-generational African-American families want to connect often annually to keep the sense of community and family alive. And that hasn't changed over time. However, what has changed is the number of activities that they're involved in while they're at the destination. So this is not just, stay at a hotel, have a picnic, a big dinner, and go home. This is organizing events, going to cultural institutions, shopping, doing things within the destination that are also bringing people together. The shopping brings people together. The dining brings people together.
Right.
And just to give you an example, of the family reunion travelers, 50% of them have shopped in a mall on a family reunion trip. And that's versus 38% of African American travelers overall. So you're seeing a higher incidence of shopping, higher incidence of outlet mall shopping, higher incidence of participating in nightlife activities than the general market African American traveler. More likely to go to a festival, whether it's music, art, or food. More likely to go to a beach, shop downtown, go to a casino, go to a live music event, take advantage of spa services, visit historic sites, national parks. I mean, we've got data on all of this showing that the family reunion travelers are more likely to partake in all of these activities. And so what that tells you when you're hosting them is that a partnership with, your local venues and institutions would certainly, benefit you in terms of helping you serve your customer.
Yeah, totally.
So give them the information that helps them create a more robust and rewarding family reunion trip.
Right, that's a great point, because I'm thinking to myself, I would love to attract this group of people, but I don't know how to appeal to this group of people because I'm not sure what their goals are of that vacation other than being together. So to understand all these other components of it, I think helps hoteliers craft a better idea of how to attract that particular group of people.
And it's very similar to what meeting planners would do when they're trying to attract a conference, because we now know in the meetings business that when people come to a conference, they often want to participate in the local scene and want to see what's there and explore the cultural institutions and dining scene. And so meeting planners are pretty adept at, serving that, giving them a portfolio of options. When you have a conference, here's where you can golf, and here's where you can have an evening event and see some live music. And I'm not so sure we're doing that as structurally in the same way with the leisure market and the family reunion market, providing them with a package of opportunities, kind of a menu of opportunities of what there is to see in the destination. And this is also a great opportunity to partner with the CVB, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, where you reside, because they very much want to, showcase the destination.
Right.
And they're very willing to work with you to make whether it's brochure or online links, kind of bring the destination alive for your prospective clients.
And this is kind of where we start to get into that cultural element of it. And in our conversations, we had talked about how the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Bermuda Tourism Authority are just two organizations that are very bullish on trying to partner with groups to attract the African-American traveler, because they understand how much money they're going to spend and how many people that they could bring to these destinations.
Absolutely. They have invested a tremendous amount of time, energy, and resources into two things: developing their own products.
Right.
In Miami, we've got Overtown. We've got historic African-American neighborhoods and institutions like art galleries that focus on African-American art. Mm-hmm. And they're really developing that product. And number two, then marketing it to not just the African-American or multicultural audiences, marketing it to the general market audience, and international audiences.
Right.
Because the African-American experience is very much the American experience. And
Absolutely.
For a cultural traveler, people who want to, understand the American experience, definitely see that the African-American experience is very important to that. And it's really huge with inbound international travelers. I love to give the example of Harlem up in New York.
Yep.
They do Harlem tours, and the Germans and the Japanese, are huge advocates and visitors who want to partake in that, as well as the general market traveler,
Right.
here in the U.S.
Right. I will see your Harlem tour and raise you at the Black Heritage Trail in Boston, for example. It's a great thing that I've personally done, and I think it's something that's not necessarily focused on enough. Right? Everyone knows the Freedom Trail, but this is another great way to learn about history and culture and heritage of a group of people that haven't been as represented in history books as in other places as well. So this all makes a lot of sense to me. But I got to ask you, what does cultural travel mean to you? Is it going to art museums? Is it going out to a dinner? Is it, looking at the culture of your people? Or is it just all of those things, or maybe none of those things?
Well, we wanted to quantify it, so we asked about specific behaviors that they participated in. And so we identified cultural travelers by those who had participated in 3 or more cultural activities when traveling on their last leisure trip. So that's the definition we use.
Okay, so 3 or more cultural activities. I thought you were going to go on and give me some specifics, but it could be going to an art museum. It could be doing that Freedom Trail. It could be whatever it is. Right.
Yeah, we definitely ask about those activities. So, for example, 66% of these travelers have been to, a music or art festival. 57% have been to historic sites.
Right.
And this is compared to, for example, 57% visiting historic sites compares to 12% of the general market African-American travelers who visit those sites. So really strong difference there.
Huh. That's
and the same thing with art museums.
Right.
So 50% of what we call cultural travelers have been to art museums on their last trip versus 8% of all other African Americans.
Is there?
We also asked about other museums
Right.
and African American museums. For example, 39% visited an African American focused museum versus 4% of all other African Americans.
That's really interesting. That's a little bit of a surprising statistics there. What do you think is the cause of that?
Well, I think like with other communities, whether you just look at the general leisure market overall, there are people with preferences and attitudinal orientations toward the arts and culture.
Right.
And this was just here we were just able to identify that in this African American community. But at Mandala Research, we do a larger study on cultural and heritage traveler of the general market, so looking at all segments of the market. And that it comes out there as well. So when you ask, we'll do a study of 2,000 leisure travelers and find about 70% or so participate in cultural activities and are slightly different than the total market overall.
Right.
And then even within that 70%, there's a group we identify further as passionate or intentional, and those are the people for whom cultural activities are the driver of that destination choice. So even within culture, there are levels of passion and intensity.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that just makes perfect sense to me. So what else can we glean from this study? Is there anything that we haven't covered yet?
Well, I think a very important development that came out of this was something we added this year.
Right.
And we generally ask about their perceived barriers to travel, future travel. And we ask about a litany of factors there. But what we added to that this year was racial profiling.
Fascinating.
We wanted to see how much of a factor that was given the current, political, social environment. And interestingly, it comes out right in between, too much hassle in airports, where 13% say that's why they're not going to travel, to health or medical issues, which 15.4% say is going to prevent them from traveling. Concern about racial profiling is at 15%, meaning 15% of African Americans say concern about racial profiling is impacting their decision to take a leisure trip in the next 12 months.
Wow.
At the top of the list, to put this in perspective, 28% say they're just too busy and can't get away from work.
Yeah, of course.
25% are concerned about their jobs or personal finances. 21% concerned about economic conditions.
Right.
But then you've got 15% concerned about racial profiling. I just thought that was very interesting, that it's not insignificant.
No, that really isn't an insignificant number. And I totally understand where the concerns are coming from, particularly that I'm seeing a lot more of that covered in the media and on social media in particular these days. But even though they're concerned about it, I mean, like, I happen to be concerned about certain issues in my life, but that doesn't necessarily mean I shouldn't travel or wouldn't travel. So even though this 15% say you're concerned about it, do you know if that actually prevents them from going away? Because, you could think about it. You could walk down the street and get racially profiled, right? So what does it matter if it's in your hometown or somewhere else?
Yeah, well, they may. I mean, for all we know, this concern could be impacting their behavior at home as well.
Right.
We didn't ask about that.
Yeah,
but the question is, which of these has an impact on your taking a leisure trip in the next 12 months? So it's having an impact on whether or not they take a trip or where they take a trip.
Right.
And I think, to your point, you may have a concern about it, but you'd still do it anyway.
Yeah.
We all do that. Maybe, we were concerned about, SARS at one point or bird flu or what have you, but maybe we traveled anyway. But what it means is, for me and the industry, is that if you're interested in attracting this audience, there has to be some kind of messaging about welcoming, about safety, about comfort, and you don't want to just jump out there and say, we don't profile. We don't actually profile on our destination.
Right.
But what conveys to African Americans that this is a welcoming place to them is photographs of African Americans in your destination or at your hotel
marketing.
or whatever venue you're promoting.
Right.
Because they want to know there are people like them there.
Right.
I mean, I remember, people saying to me, well, I've always wanted to go to X state in the far north, upper northwest of this country. And but I don't know if African American people go there, and if I'd stand out, and if I would be safe, especially as an African American woman.
Right. Yeah.
So that very much is alive and well.
Especially,
and I don't want to name destinations.
Nor should you.
There are more than a handful of destinations that regularly come up with African Americans. In terms of they don't feel like they should go there.
Fascinating. So if you're in one of those destinations, then I think the best thing that you could do is to follow the recommendation of trying to appeal towards that audience by featuring people of color in your advertising and your communications and all of that sort of stuff that we just said. That's a really great point to make, I think.
Mm-hmm. And then genuinely be what you're representing.
Right.
So, we can have a picture showing African Americans having a great time here, but you really should genuinely, be a destination that is welcoming, and people can enjoy themselves there without any kind of threats. So I think destinations that want to attract this market probably need to work with local officials and ensure that the local police force isn't doing any profiling. That things really are, that they are attuned to the value of tourists to the community, and that these are economic drivers for the success of the community, and that efforts should be made to make these travelers feel welcome. And I think it's a community-wide effort.
Yeah, it sure is. And I'm sitting here trying to piece this all together about how for it to be successful. And I'm really glad that we're talking about this issue in particular because it really needs to be discussed, especially with some of the incidents certain hotels have had recently when dealing with African-American guests, which is just purely despicable in my opinion. And I think I want to throw this out to all of my folks out there in the audience. I want to hear from you. What are some of the things that you're doing to make sure that all of your guests out there feel comfortable in your hotel, no matter what their cultural or racial heritage happens to be? And also, maybe some of my African-American friends out there in the listening audience, maybe you could drop me a note to tell me what your experience has been like at hotels and whether or not hotels are appealing to you and your community. Because I know that certain hotels, I happen to be of Jewish descent, and I know a lot of hotels do a great job at trying to appeal towards Jewish folks in Florida during Passover, for example. They've realized that's a good money-making business. I have gay friends who have gone to, gay-focused resorts, for example, because they feel like they can be themselves. They could be more comfortable in those resorts, and it's a great money maker for the folks that are facilitating that experience for these people. So please drop me a line. You can find me, Glenn, at rouse.media, or of course on social media anywhere at Traveling Glenn. Now back to you. I'm curious, Laura, is there anything else that you think is important that we discuss before we wrap up this conversation?
Well, just building on your point, I think the LGBT community is an excellent framework.
Right.
They provide an excellent framework for how the industry can move forward with this market. And I talk about it. I have a women's group, women in the travel industry, focused on women who work in the industry.
Right. And
we look at the LGBTQ movement as well, because they've made such progress in terms of making LGBTQ travelers comfortable and enabling them to identify the companies and the destinations that are welcoming of them. And also in terms of employment, they've identified those organizations also that are welcoming of LGBTQ employees. And so on the women's side, we're saying, hey, let's look at how this community has established, this success. So I think that's a good a model to look at. And then I think one last parting thought here.
Yep.
what has come out in this is the importance to African American travelers of cultural institutions, of history, in the destination that reflects African American, the African American experience. And, if you have that in your destination, and even if you're just a hotel that, doesn't have direct control over that,
right.
You can make more visible and communicate to potential guests, what is available in that destination that they'd find appealing. So if you've got the African American culture and history, definitely talk about it, shout about it, and let African American travelers know, because they have a strong interest in that.
Beautiful. I love it. So we've been speaking with Laura Mandala of Mandala Research. And Laura, it's just my favorite time of the show for my guests, time for a shameless plug. How can people find you, and tell us a little bit about your organization so they know really what you're doing and how they can engage you?
Very, very kind of you, Glenn. So Mandala Research has been in business over 20 years, looking at all aspects of the travel industry. And in addition to these industry reports, like the African American traveler, the culinary traveler, sustainability, accessibility, and other topics, we do the proprietary studies for hotel companies, for retail companies, and other companies looking to attract diverse audiences to their properties and their businesses. So we're happy to talk with you about how we can bring this 20 years of experience in such a wide range of markets, and help you better understand how to position yourself to have a broader appeal to a wider range of customers. And our website is mandalaresearch.com, and you can buy these reports on the site, and love to chat with everyone.
Great, and they've worked with great groups such as the AARP and state tourism organizations, as well as other travel companies out there. So a lot of great information. Laura, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure, Glenn. It was really fun.
Yeah, I thought so too. I really learned a lot today, and I hope all of you out there learned as well. And I really hope that this is a conversation that can open up some dialogue between all of us, because one of the things that we really need to do is start talking about these issues, right? Racial profiling is real. It's happening. It's keeping guests away from your hotels. How can you appeal to this group? How can you appeal to other sub-market groups out there? And all leading to, how can you all make more money? So drop me a line. Let me know what your thoughts are. I think it's a good place to remind everybody you're all vibrating with love and light. You're pulsating with love and light. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll be back next week. That is, unless I decide to crash an African-American family reunion, because I'm in it for the free T-shirts. Thanks, guys, and I'll be back next week.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at TravelingGlenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.